Hello, everybody. My second article was on the impact of elementary general music programs at varying age levels on extra musical skills. The first article we're going to take a look at is called "Is More Time in General Music Class Associated with Stronger Extra Musical Outcomes in Kindergarten?" The purpose of the article was to assess the extent to which an additional 45 minutes of music per week impacts students' performance on extra musical assessments. The participants consisted of two cohorts of 203 kindergarten students at three different schools in an urban New England setting. The three different schools were all of similar socioeconomic and demographic environments. The treatment group received at least 90 minutes per week of music instruction, which is quite a bit more than the average, and the control group received the standard 45 minutes of music instruction per week during their kindergarten year. And students were assessed at the end of their kindergarten year using two assessments called the flanker effect and the reverse digit span. The flanker effect, which I thought was really fascinating, was a computerized test in which students had to identify which of five fish of a certain color was the hungriest. And the students were given a set of guidelines before completing the assessment. The first part of the assessment was the bluefish assessment. In the bluefish assessment, students were told that the fish in the middle was the hungriest. So, using a mouse visually on a computer, they had to click on the bluefish that was in the center. It started off really simple, and then it gradually got more complex by both the fish in the middle and the fish on the sides changing the way they were facing. So, for example, the fish in the middle, which is the one they were supposed to click on, would be facing towards the right. The fish on the far right would be facing up. The fish on the far right would be facing down, etc., etc. After they completed the bluefish assessment, they completed the pinkfish assessment, which was the same concept but a different set of rules. In the pinkfish assessment, the fish that was on the farthest towards the outside was the hungriest. So once again, it started off very simple, and the students just selected the pink fish that was on the outside, and they were all facing the same way. And then gradually it increased in complexity. Some of the fish would be facing up, some of the fish would be facing down, with the intention of distracting the students. The third part and the final part of the flanker effect assessment, and by far the most complicated part, was the combination of the bluefish and the pinkfish assessments. So in this assessment, students would see bluefish and pinkfish on the screen, and they would have to apply the guidelines of both the bluefish assessment and the pinkfish assessment, which are essentially the opposite, and select the fish that was the hungriest. So first, they had to identify what color the fish was. Then they had to recall the rules and distinguish between the rules of the bluefish assessment and the pinkfish assessment. And then they had to apply those rules to what color the fish was. So that was by far the most complex aspect of the flanker effect assessment. The second assessment was the reverse digit span. In this assessment, the students simply were told a list of digits, and they had to recite these digits backwards. So, for example, it would start with about two digits, so they would be told 5-3, and the students had to verbally say backwards 3-5. Each time they got it correctly, the assessor would add another digit to the end of it. So, for example, 5-3-3-5. They got it correct. 5-3-2, 2-3-5. And the assessor would keep adding more and more numbers until the student answered incorrectly. The results of the assessment, unfortunately, did not show a statistically significant difference between the students in the treatment group and the students in the control group. It's unlikely that the students in the control group received any musical instruction outside of music, because that could be a possible explanation to why there wasn't a difference in the results. However, a high percentage of the students in all three of these schools were low income, and the majority of musical activities that take place outside of school, for example, private lessons, all cost money. So it's highly unlikely that students of the control group received any more than 45 minutes of instruction, which is half of what the students of the treatment group received. So unfortunately, the results did not show a statistically significant difference. I think a possible explanation for this is because all of us know that music does impact skills outside of music. I think perhaps the connection between music class and extra musical skills increases as children get older. And a second point I want to make is that at younger ages, I think that perhaps the quantity of musical instruction doesn't make an impact on how music can augment extra musical skills. However, just the yes or no question, are students receiving musical instruction? That alone creates the difference in their extra musical skills. So I think perhaps all of the students, treatment group and control group, did better on the assessment than they would have if they had gotten zero musical instruction. I think if we had done 3 different groups and one group had 0 minutes per year or 0 minutes per week of musical instruction, I think they would have done significantly worse on both of the assessments than the control group, which received 45 minutes per week, and the treatment group, which received 90 minutes per week. So on to the second article, which is about third grade music and, whoops, I got ahead of myself, which is about third grade music and the impact of math-related music on basic math fluency. The purpose of this research was to understand if implementing math-related music into general music classes would in fact improve students' basic math fluency and if it would improve their enjoyment of math. So 2 separate components there. The participants were 38 third grade students at a Title I school in southeastern Georgia. There were 5 homeroom classes total, and two of these 5 third grade classes were selected to participate because they had similar math scores to each other on various assessments. So that increases the validity of the assessment because it intends what it intends to measure, because before the assessment, students had very similar math skills in this class. This is a quasi-experimental factorial design because the students aren't just randomly assigned to whether they're going to get the treatment or not. Rather, they're assigned, like all of the students in one class are given the treatment, all the students in another class are not given the treatment. And we're going to call the treatment group Group A and the control group Group B. Group A and B both receive 40 minutes of music class twice a week, so a total of 80 minutes per week. Group A, during a 6-week period, the 6 weeks of intervention, Group A received an additional 15 minutes of instruction for each class, so 30 minutes per week, which occurred at the beginning of class, and this was specifically math-related music. And the teacher researcher taught this portion of the class, and she used the same materials that the third grade teachers used in their own classrooms to teach math. And Group B just received the standard 80 minutes of normal music class. The assessments, which the first one I wasn't familiar with because I'm not from Georgia, was the Georgia RESA Assessment of Student Progress, and the second one was the Survey of Students' Attitudes Towards Math. And that one was only administered to the treatment group, and it was administered before intervention and after intervention, and it took place of just yes or no answers to questions about both music and math. Let's take a second to look at the results. Might zoom in here just a little bit just to make sure you all can see. So as you can see, the results of the test of the GRASP, unfortunately, did not create a result, once again, similar to the last one. The pre-test mean score was 0.84 for the treatment group, and the post-test was 20.53, so there was progress, but there was also progress in the control group. The mean score was 21.95, and the post-test was 23.89, which is about the same difference. I think a possible explanation for the fact that the pre-mean score and the post-mean score went up is because students were continuing to learn math in their homeroom classroom during this 6-week period, and naturally they would hopefully have an increased mean score on math skills just by that. So unfortunately, the music-related math, the 30 minutes of instruction per week over 6 weeks, totaling 3 hours, did not result in a statistically significant difference on the grasp. And I think perhaps that's because the teacher-researcher used the same materials as the third grade homeroom teachers did. So perhaps it was just reinforcement and not any new skills applied. On the bright side, the post-interview survey questions for Group A, or the treatment group, yielded a very significant difference between the pre-interview and the post-interview questions. I'm going to zoom in again just to make sure you can see the percentages here. So in 8 out of the 10 questions, the number of yeses increased, and in 2 out of the 10 questions, the number of yeses did not go down, but it stayed the same. The 2 questions where it did not change were, do you like to draw or create things, question number 3, and do you like to work with calculators or computers, question 5. I think both of those have little to do with music or math, at least in 3rd grade. You wouldn't typically use a calculator. So I think the questions that are relevant to the study of music and the study of math showed that there was a difference between the pre and post assessment. And I think the biggest difference that I'd like to point out is question 1. Do you like to add or subtract numbers? Only 62% at the pre-assessment before intervention, and 100% at the post-assessment after intervention. Question 2, do you like to subtract numbers, was also a significant difference. Not quite as significant, but still significant. A difference of 26%. 42% saying yes in the pre-assessment, 68% in the post-assessment. So I think that although the results of the grasp were not statistically significant, I think it's very encouraging that there was not a single question where students answered more no than yes in the post-interview or in the post-intervention interview than in the pre-intervention interview, because I think that means that the results of the music-related math cause students to enjoy both music and math more, and perhaps understand the connection between music and math more. And although the students in the treatment group didn't do particularly better than those in the control group in the grasp, I think the fact that they enjoy both music and math more will cause them to perform better in those 2 areas in the long run. So that is presentation 2. Thank you for watching.